This tutorial will explain how to create a facial expression system that fits Synty characters. Previously, we had to look at how to switch out the face of the default Synty characters, and this tutorial picks up right where that one ended, and I'll answer a few more questions that came up. Hi and welcome, glad to see you back. The setup we have created in the previous tutorial looked like this. We imported a customized version of the characters, attached 3 faceplates to them, and assigned a material to each of them. One for the eyes, one for the nose, one for the mouth. And by the way, the graphics I used here are the ones I made for my own projects. If you are searching for some, look for facial expression sheet on your search engine of choice. While you probably won't directly find things to reuse here, they are a good resource to create your own. Now, let's make this even simpler. We'll create a shader graph material in which we hold references to the parts of the face and 2 scripts that let us control which is being shown and what it should look like. I start by still having my character in the scene where I left off. As you can see, if I open its prefab, there are still all 3 faceplates assigned. Remove 2 of them and rename the remaining one to facial expression. Also get rid of all the materials that hold a single part of the expressions. We don't need them going forward. In your project window, create a new URP shader graph, Ilit1, just like the materials we previously used for all the parts. Don't worry if you never worked with shader graph before, what we are setting out to create is super simple. First, we need a reference for each part of the face we want to customize. I'll go for eyes, nose and mouth again, just like before, but I'll also add 2 more, extras 1 and extras 2. That way I can also get freckles, for example. Starting with the eyes, drag it out of the reference into the emptiness to get a node to work with. Base color over here is what will be displayed on your object once you assign the new material, but as you can see, you can't connect a texture with it directly. As many other parts, textures need to be sampled. Grab the red connector, drag it to the right, let go, then type in sample. We are going for the sample texture to the sample entry. For now, connect the RGBA4 value with the base color. Your main preview will update to display a white sphere because the texture is currently empty. Click on the eyes entry and have a look at the info box on the right. You get name and reference, both of which are going to be important in a moment, and a default value, which is set to none. Assign one of your own eye textures to it. I'll go with a basic looking one, because this will be the default new face of all characters before any custom changes are being made. And you will see something looking a bit odd. The eyes look a bit strange compared to their texture. Here is where we should create the first material and assign it to see what the upcoming changes will do. Right-click on your shader graph and create a new material. Call it something like base face expression, then assign it to your character's faceplate. If the face looks like it is missing the eyes, check if your shader graph tab shows a small asterisk. That's the sign that you haven't saved your progress. Alright, we have a white face. Let's see what we need to do to change that. Head over to the Graph Inspector and the Graph Settings tab. The shader graph was created as a metallic opaque texture, and just like last time, we need to change it over to being a specular transparent one. Since we now have a transparency value, connect the A channel to it. Still white? Click on the material itself and check in the inspector if the default texture has been assigned. It has a habit of not doing that. Assign the eye texture there as well. We have eyes! And they're a bit too shiny for my taste. In the previous tutorial, we reduced the smoothness value, which we can do directly in this shader as well. I'll hide the preview now, since it has done its job, and we are going to need the space. From here, we are going to add more textures to the void, sample them, combine them, and finally assign them as one pass to the base color. Start by removing the connections. Then add each texture reference just like we did before. Make sure to leave ample room between them and the final fragment box. We are going to need the space. Alright, let's start with the eyes and nose, and make sure you have set up default values for all the textures you want to display by default, as well as set them up in the material itself. If you run into strange visuals, it is highly likely you forgot this step. Click into the empty space, click Space, and search for lerp. Connect the RGB values of the first two samplers to it, and the alpha value of the second sampler to the T value. This will add both together into a single output. Connect the out node to the base color of the fragment. Click Save, and see the monster you have created. We are missing the transparency, but need a combined one now instead of working with any from the samplers themselves. Click into the empty field again, press Space, enter Add. This one takes both alpha values. Connect it to the fragment's alpha, save your progress, and you can see you now have nose and eyes as one. This now needs to be repeated a few times. You need the space between the samplers and the fragment, because each lerp and each add node takes the previous result and adds the next sampling to it. For the two extras, if you add these as well, make sure you have a fully transparent texture the same size as the rest. In my case, that's a 512 by 512 texture, and I just used the same template as I used for all the other face plots, just with everything set to transparent. Once you copied everything, save it and see your result. You can begin switching out textures for the material already and see how they will combine. This, however, is not the end of the system. See, for one, if you have two characters in your scene and both use the material and you make any changes, you have identical twins. Hardly what we want, right? Also, while having one facial expression is nice, we can instead have a whole range of them and assign them through code like in the intro video you saw, where one character is happy we are in range while the other is decidedly not. We are done with shader graph, so feel free to close the tab. Instead, we are going to write some code. One class to define different facial expressions in, and another to assign them when the expressions are being called to change. The first class is dead simple and just hold references to the eyes and mouth. I don't define the nose, because that is not going to change in my project at all, and having to assign the same texture every time is needlessly time-consuming. The long attributes here, at the front, come from Odin Inspector, which is super handy for this task. It puts a preview box on the assigned texture onto the scriptable object, which makes checking for errors a lot easier once your collection of facial expressions grow. However, Odin is not required for this to work, so if you don't want to use the asset, remove the attribute. Public accessors make sure we can read the reference in the second script. The facial expression controller has two tasks: creating a new material instance and changing the eyes and mouth based on our expression definition. To be able to do so, we reference the mesh renderer at the top. To fix the same face syndrome, we need to create a new instance of the assigned material. That way, any changes we make will only apply to this instance instead of all characters in your world. The next four values are the IDs for the properties we defined inside of shader graph. If you trust your autocomplete, make sure to check if these names are the same as the value names of your properties, or stuff will break. In Awake, we create a new instance of the material and assign it back to the renderer. This makes sure we are only ever changing this one face and not all of them. Then the setExpression method takes a definition and changes eyes and mouth based on it. Again, the button attribute is an Odin Inspector one that gives us a handy shortcut to assign expressions via button press on the component. I'll show how this works for my sample scene in a moment, but let's first give this a test as it is. Save the script and attach it to the character space prefab. That way it's easier to find again. Reference the faceplate. Then create 2 or 3 facial expression definitions. Make sure to give them names you can recognize. If you want to work with the extras, for example for freckles or scars, make a new copy of the base material and set it up in a way you need, then assign it to the faceplate. Once done, I'll switch over to runtime and with the button on the component, assign any of the expressions. Works. Neat. And if you enjoyed it this far, please give the video a like and consider subscribing. So how did I create the scene with the switching expressions from the start? Each character has a script with 2 expressions attached, neutral and either happy or unhappy. The character starts on neutral, and if the player enters a certain radius, which is handled in onTriggerEnter, the expression changes to whatever was defined. Once the player leaves the area again, it is set back to neutral. Hope you enjoyed this one, and that it answered a few questions you might have had at the end of the last tutorial. Have a great week!